Okay, we're back here in the code. Let me just close everything and clean everything up. So what I'm going to be really focusing on is all the stuff in app directory. We have this landing page. We have this home page. And the first thing we're going to do is, thinking back to what I was talking about, we need a separation between the client and server. So we're going to have the landing page in page.tsx be on the server side. It's already asynchronous. We can make a separation between all of our JSX here, stick it over on the client side, put all of our JSX, which will render a lot of our query data that we will be prefetching. So by default, if we don't specify use client on the top, then the component is considered a server component by default. So this will be the server side. We're going to create a client side component, which will hold most of our JSX, if not all of it. And the reason for that is when we query the data, a lot of it gets rendered in the UI. So it makes sense to just pair our queries with our JSX. Also, if we're making any mutations, any modifications to data in our database, they'll usually be triggered by a UI element. And so it just makes sense to package our queries and mutations that are being executed with our JSX and then have our server component here deal with authentication, which occurs asynchronously, and prefetching since it needs to occur on the server. So let's get started. What I'm going to create is for at the app level, because it's at the level of our landing page here, a hidden route here, hidden folder, underscore UI. So by doing underscore UI, UI is not going to be included in the routing tree. So you can't go to underscore UI because it has that underscore. And we're going to do the same thing in home. Just add underscore UI here. And my naming convention for the client-side component, I usually just call it whatever the name of the page is plus contents. So we're just going to add in here use client right on the top here. Export const landing page contents. So since this is an exported component, it doesn't need to be export default like pages are. Let me just grab this JSX here and paste it into here. We'll need to grab the imports as well. So let me just stick that there. Grab this, put this here. Great. And so let me add return landing page contents to our landing page. Then we're going to do the same thing for our home. So we're going to add in home page contents.tsx, export const home page contents, and need to remember to add use client to the top. Use client. Great. And then from our home here, we're just going to grab all the things, all the things that are being rendered there. And we'll need the import for our sign out button. Tremendous. Great. Oh, wait, whoops. We need to grab our home page contents. Wonderful. Great. So everything in the functionality is just the same. We've just separated out all the things that need to occur on the server or on the home page component itself. Anything that needs to happen on the client will do in the homepage contents component. So what I'm going to do is just move these over corresponding with their individual page. Right? So home page with home page, landing page with landing page. We're going to do the prefetching on this side and then doing the actual queries and eventually mutations on the other side. And you can't prefetch a mutation. I hope that's also clear. Obviously, mutations occur when you have some form of data to mutate, and obviously you don't know that ahead of time, and so you generally don't prefetch those. So prefetching only for queries. Mutations, they happen when the user asks for it. We can't really optimize loading there in the same manner. So there's going to be a lot of stuff to do with prefetching. But one of the first things is I'm just going to install a quick package. It's called React Error Boundary. So when we throw our tRPC errors, we need a boundary like we do with hydration to basically catch things. And in this case, with the error boundary, obviously it's for catching any errors that occur when we're doing our fetches. So we can create some form of an error state or a piece of UI that shows an error state that we can then use as a fallback. Something that's like refresh the page to try again, or automatically, hit this button to navigate to a different page. I'm going to do this. Remember to do -- force. Grab that. And we're going to do const query client is equal to get query client from @/tRPC/server. Great. Void. So this is a little bit of funky syntax, but this is the way that it's done. Void query client dot prefetch query. And inside of here, we're going to use tRPC grabbed from the server. Then dot count, which, if you guys remember from our routers here, we have all of our procedures. We put them inside of the app router, and our key to reference it is count. So here, tRPC.count. And here, you can see we have our create count, delete count, get count, and update count. So in this landing page, we're going to do get count. And it's dot query options. And query options we need to provide, if you remember, it requires an input of count ID. Now here initially, we don't know what our count ID is. So we're just going to add in a empty string for now. Later on, when we create a count in the future, I'm going to cheat and go into the database and grab it. I think it's unfortunate in the way that we... I hope you don't mind. It's just for the demo's sake. We'll just grab it that way. But usually, you'll have some way of referencing the count ID. So... probably usually in the URL parameters you'd have it, but for the sake of this demo, we'll just hard code it in there. So let's just move this around here real quick. We have our count here, we prefetched it. Now we need to set up all of our boundaries. So what we're going to do is add some parentheses around this, pop it down, and tab this over just for styling's sake. And we're going to have our hydration boundary, which is grabbed from @Tanstack React Query here. Make sure that we put our landing page contents in here. We're also going to have error boundary, not taken from that, taken from what we just did our installation on. So it's going to be the top one, import error boundary from React error boundary. There we go. So we have boundary here. And we're going to have a requirement here, but for now, let's just not worry about that for just 1 second while we get everything else. We're going to need a suspense to deal with the loading state. Even though we're trying to minimize it, there's still going to be a loading state, so we're going to have suspense to handle that. And then tab this over. Great. So those are the main 3 parts that we need: a hydration boundary, an error boundary, and a loading boundary, if you want to think about it in that way. The initial state here for the hydration boundary will be dehydrate. So use that function there from @Tanstack. And then pass in our query client. Great. So let me just move some of these things around real quick. And then basically what we're going to have is 2 fallbacks here. So we can just do, for the sake of this, 2 divs. And this one will be there was an error here. And then this can also be a fallback. And another div, loading. So we'll see that later on when we showcase a loading state, and hopefully there's no error. Maybe I'll induce an error just to see what the error state looks like. It'll just be there was an error appearing on the screen, so nothing too riveting. And then we have our internal component tree here, all of the pieces of the landing page. So let's get through and implement the query side and then do a quick render over here of the count. So over here on the client side, we're going to have const tRPC. Unlike on the server here where we can just import tRPC directly, we have a function, a hook, that allows for us to use the client side tRPC instance. So here we're just calling use tRPC taken from the client side to get our tRPC object here. Then the typical query looks like this. Const data is equal to use, and since we have a suspense here with a loading state, use suspense query here from @Tanstack React Query. And what we're going to pass in is our tRPC object here, dot count, dot get count, dot query options. So, and query options is a function, and we'll need to provide count ID. And for now, we'll just do empty string. We'll hard code it in later, as I've been explaining. But here, if you hover over data, you can see we have the shape of what we expect from a count object that we've stored in the database, the actual count itself, the user ID, and the ID that corresponds to each count. So what we're going to just do is add in some divs here underneath this one, and we'll write count will be data dot count there. And what else do we want to display? Maybe just for the sake of demonstration here, data.id. Sure. And maybe also just we'll display it all. User ID. Great. So that's basically all you have to do to just grab it. We prefetched it, got everything on the server. If the query key here is the same as we put here, then we'll just use that data that we prefetched. If it's something different, then we'll need to make another API call in order to get the new data. Or if the data that we've prefetched here extends beyond, and I believe it is not in init, it is, where is it? I think it's on the client side. Let's see here. Yes, the stale time here, if it exceeds 30,000 milliseconds, I believe, then it will just refetch, sorry. So great, let's do the same thing for the home page real quick. And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, the home page is going to take care of all of the authorized features. We're probably just going to do the same query here, so we can just copy it. And since mutations don't need to be prefetched, it'll basically look the same. So what we can do is just copy a lot of this over. And I'll just do, I think, this. Yep. And I get it. A lot of errors, a lot of scary errors. What we're going to do is just also get rid of this and push this here, rid of the semicolon. And then we need our imports. So let's see here. We can just copy all of these and then paste it in here, and we should be fine. Great. And then for the home page, we can just grab all of these here, paste them in at the top, grab the imports, paste them in over here as well. Great. And we're not using the data yet. We'll probably just have a little thing here that displays the count. So we'll do the same thing here, but we won't need to display the rest. But I'll just create a quick row of buttons. So class name, flex, row, gap, x of 2, let's just say. We can deal with the styling later when we render everything. And then we're just going to have a few buttons. So we're going to have a button, This one will be increment, and this one will be decrement, or I can just say decrease and increase, right? And then button here for delete, and I'll just add in a little icon for a trash icon there. Great. And let's see. I think we should figure out a way to handle how we're going to deal with if a count does not exist. So I believe how we're actually doing it in our router now is, whoops, it opened over here. If we get the count, if there is no existing count, then it's going to throw an error, which is probably not what we want to have happen now that I'm thinking about it. So we're going to make just a quick modification here. So we're not going to throw an error when there's no count. And if existing count is potentially undefined, then we need to make sure that we just provide some indication that it is so without impacting all the other stuff. So we can do ID is undefined as well, and user ID undefined. So everything is undefined. Within here, we're just providing that the entire query can't return an undefined object. Here, we're making sure that we're providing some form of object. Great. So what we're going to do is render something different. So in this case here, for this bit, we're just going to add in a quick conditional here. If data.count exists, then we'll render all of this. This all needs one parent, so we'll just add a fragment here. There we go. And then for the other side here, we'll add in a div here that just says no count exists. Great. And then for the home contents here, obviously this count does not exist, so we are going to wrap it in pretty much the same thing here. So we'll just add this here, hit enter, move all this stuff over, add another parentheses, and then we'll fill this out a little bit later. Let me add in the fragment and move all this stuff up. If you're wondering how I'm moving all of this stuff up, if you have something highlighted and you hit Alt on your keyboard or Command, and you hit the arrow keys up and down, you can basically move them. So that's how I was moving this stuff up and down, if you're curious. And we need to open or close the braces here. And then here we're just going to add in a button that says create first count, or just create count, since there aren't going to be multiple. Great. So we're going to need to create our mutations, and then we'll add them to each of our buttons. What we're going to do for each mutation is const create count, and we'll use mutation taken from @Tanstack here, and we're going to provide in our tRPC .count .create count, and provide mutation options. And mutation options gives us an opportunity to deal with what happens on error. So if there was an error while we were performing some form of mutation, and for now we'll just do an empty function. We'll deal with that functionality a little bit later. And then here we'll have on success, and that'll also be an empty function. Let me just deal with creating all of the mutations first, and then we'll deal with the mutation options in a second. The next one, const delete count, use mutation, tRPC .count .create, .delete count, mutation options. Great. And finally, const update count, use mutation tRPC .count update count mutation options. Whoops. add an extra P there. And then all I'm going to do is just copy this part here so that they all have on success and on error. And what I'm going to do is just provide a toast message. So it's a little pop-up that will appear on the corner, and it'll explain what just happened for the user to see. So first, we're going to have error be the title. And then inside of there, we're going to have close button to be true. So we can close the toaster. And then description here, an error occurred while creating the count. Great. Whoops. And then we're going to do the same for the others. So let me just copy this, stick this here, stick this also here. And toast I got from Sonner, just so that everyone's clear about that, which was part of the Shadcyan installations that we had. Sonner, and I believe, toast does not is not a part of it anymore, so we only have Sonner right here. Cool. So we'll need another toast for success here. Or actually, we don't need a toast. So if we create a count, the UI is going to be updated, so we don't need a little pop-up in the corner that says a count has been created, because obviously the user will see the feedback that the UI changes. What we are going to need to do is get query client. So real quick, we're going to do const query client is equal to use query client, taken again from Tanstack here. And we're going to say in this query client, invalidate query. So we're basically saying for query key, tRPC dot count dot get count. We're basically saying that this query is now stale. You need to refetch it. So that's what this chunk does here. And let me actually just make it bigger so that you can see as much of it as possible here. And then we're going to do something similar for the other on successes. Actually, the exact same for all of them. So we can just do this actually. We don't need the curly braces. Great. And for each of the error while deleting the count and while updating the count. Wonderful. So we need to attach our mutations now to our buttons. So what we're going to do is for create count here, I'm just going to do on click here to call create count dot mutate. Whoops, not mutate async. You could choose mutate async. I'm just going to call the regular mutation. Great. So that's for the create count. Then we have another one for delete. So on click here, which will be delete count dot mutate. And does this mutation take anything? Let me check in the count real quick. Delete count does not need an input. Only update count does. And so what we're going to do here for the increment, increase and decrease here, all that we're going to do is on click update count dot mutate here. We need to provide is increasing to be true. And then we'll do the same for decrease here. Is increasing to be false. Wonderful. So hopefully you'll understand that we're doing what we're doing for each one of these. So we have an increase button, we have a decrease button. It will be increasing the count when we hit the increase button, and we'll be decreasing when we hit the decrease button. And so we provide toasts on the error because usually there is no UI indication that an error has occurred, so we need to explicitly tell the user. That's good design pattern there. On success, we need to invalidate the query that occurs both in the home page but also on the landing page. So if we were to navigate between them, we would see a change happening because we've invalidated the query and it needs to refetch. So it'll get the new value. Great. So looks like we have everything done. So we're going to do npm run dev to get it started on the server. So transitioning over to the browser real quick. Let's just do a quick refresh. And great. So this is the landing page. No count exists. You can see there a very brief loading that popped in that occurs sometimes. Again, remember, unless the data is stale and if there's a change in count ID, then there is no refetch that's needed. And so it's only after we waited a certain period of time that the loading resumes. So now let me just log in. We can head over to look at the home page. Okay, after signing in, we are now back here on the home page. And great, we have a create count button. So let's try it out. We can hit create count and let's look at our server here. We seem to have a code of 200, which means that it worked. So we can go into our Neon console, hit refresh real quick, and we can see that a count has been successfully created. Great. So the reason that this UI doesn't update just yet is because we don't actually have a count value to put in our query options here. So there's a couple ways that we can remedy this. We can obviously just copy this and put it inside of count here. Right? And if we hit save here, we go back and refresh, then we get our little panel here that corresponds to in our code is now showing because count is a valid number, 1. As we've seen, if we go over to our Neon database real quick, a count of 1. I think that we should actually change this so that it's explicitly not undefined, because if count gets decremented to 0, then this conditional would be false and thus would fall through to prompting the user to create another count. That's definitely not what we want. So just saying explicitly that count is not undefined, then we're going to show the little panel here. Great. So we can try to increase, decrease. Those look to be all good. And if we delete, we'll be prompted to create another count. We have to go back into our database, grab the new ID of the count that we just created so that we can stick it back into the home here. There could be some elegant ways to fix this. One of which would be, if I just paste this correctly here, if we just refresh, count of 1, let me just increase it to 3 real quick. If we put this ID into our landing page contents here in this count ID, if we sign out and go back to the landing page, then we should see count being 3. This was the ID that we provided, and this is the user ID. So showing that get count as it was a base procedure. If we go back to the code real quick and just open up our count.ts here, it's a base procedure, which means that there is no auth check like a protected procedure. Then it can still be viewed within the landing page. So switching back to the website real quick, yeah, you can see that everything is working now. I'm sure that there is more elegant ways to deal with grabbing this ID. I just wanted to showcase in the demo that everything is working. I'm sure that you can provide parameters in the URL up here, this ID, then extract the parameters here, const params is equal to use params, right? To then pull the ID, count ID from the parameters and do the query that way. So, but just for demo's sake, I just wanted to show that the API is working. We're able to modify data that is stored within our Neon database and be able to modify it when we log in. So we can increase it, decrease it, and delete it which if we go back to our Neon database, we can see it's an empty count table. Awesome. Hopefully you understand now how to use tRPC, Tanstack. It was a really long tutorial, but I hope that it was well worth it. Let's move on to the next step.